All right. Today, we're tackling a book that is, well, it's a beast. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. You've definitely heard of it, and let's be honest, you've probably been a little intimidated by it. But don't worry. In this explainer, we're going to break down the story, the characters, and the absolutely huge ideas that make this one of the most powerful novels ever written.
So, before we even get into the story, let's just start with the one question that is at the absolute heart of this book. Can you ever do something truly terrible for a good reason? Does a noble goal make a horrifying act okay? Just keep that question in the back of your mind, because it's going to come up again and again.
You see, this whole story doesn't start with a bang. It doesn't start with an action at all. It starts with a thought, a radical, intellectual, and really, really dangerous idea that's been growing in one man's mind. Okay, so let's meet our guy. His name is Raskolnikov, and he is brilliant, a former law student with a sharp mind. But he is also dirt poor. I mean, starving, living in this tiny, suffocating little attic room that he calls a coffin. He's totally cut himself off from the world, and in that lonely silence, his mind starts going to some very dark places.
And this is the idea he cooks up. He actually writes an article about it. He argues that all of humanity is basically split into two groups. It's this incredibly arrogant idea, born from poverty and pride, and it's the very thing he's going to use to justify committing murder.
So here's how it breaks down. On one side, you've got the ordinary people, the masses. Their job is just to obey the law and, well, make more people. But then there are the extraordinary ones. Think Napoleon. These are the geniuses, the world changers. And Raskolnikov believes they have an inner right to step over any obstacle, even wade through blood if it's for some new, great idea. So take a wild guess which group our guy thinks he belongs to.
Well, any good theory needs a test, right? And Raskolnikov finds his test subject in an old pawnbroker. He sees her as this cruel, useless parasite who just sucks the life out of people. So he convinces himself that killing her and using her money for good causes isn't really a crime. No, in his twisted logic, it's practically his moral duty.
So he's got the theory, he's got the target. But now we're going to see what happens when a brilliant, clean idea from your head smashes headfirst into messy, brutal reality.
I mean, on paper, the plan seems so straightforward. It's like a math equation. Do the deed, get the money, do great things, and prove the theory right. Simple, clean, logical. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, just about everything. The reality is a complete nightmare. His cold, calculating intellect just vanishes. He's fumbling, he's clumsy with the axe, and then the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen happens. The pawnbroker's gentle, innocent sister, Lizaveta, just walks in, and in a moment of sheer panic, he kills her too. And just like that, the great man is gone, replaced by a terrified, sloppy killer.
So the act is done. But instead of feeling powerful or free, Raskolnikov's real punishment, well, that begins the second the axe falls.
Yeah, he doesn't become Napoleon. He just becomes a total wreck. He collapses into this delirious fever. He's haunted by nightmares. All that intellectual pride is just washed away by this gnawing, physical sickness of guilt. His own mind has become his prison.
And this is a huge part of his punishment. The crime doesn't just put him outside the law, it cuts him off from all of humanity. He can't stand to be around his best friend, or even his own mother and sister when they visit. He's so paranoid, he thinks every look, every question is an accusation. He is completely and utterly alone with his horrible secret. And right when he's at his most vulnerable, he meets his perfect match, his intellectual equal, Porfiry Petrovich. Now, this guy is not your typical detective. He's not looking for fingerprints. He's a master psychologist, and he takes one look at Raskolnikov and just knows something is wrong.
Porfiry's whole strategy is psychological. He believes a guilty man can't help himself. He'll just keep circling the subject of his crime like a moth drawn to a flame until he gives himself away. So he engages Raskolnikov in these incredibly tense conversations, talking about everything but the murder. And then he'll drop a little bomb, like bringing up Raskolnikov's own article on extraordinary men. It's this terrifying game of cat and mouse that's played entirely on their minds.
So our guy is trapped. He's being crushed by his own guilt and toyed with by Porfiry. But then two very different people offer him two very different ways out.
And then there's Sonia. Now, in the eyes of the world, she's a sinner. She's had to become a prostitute just to feed her starving family. But on the inside, she is the moral compass of the entire book. She represents pure faith, incredible compassion, and this idea of finding salvation through suffering.
And right here, this is the core conflict for Raskolnikov's soul. Porfiry is offering him the path of logic and reason. Just confess, accept the legal punishment, it's the rational thing to do. But Sonya, she offers a spiritual path. Confess to save your soul. Accept your suffering and find redemption not in a courtroom, but through faith and love.
And in the end, he just can't take it anymore. The secret is eating him alive. But he doesn't confess to the police. He confesses to Sonya. She's the one person he thinks can look past the monster and see the suffering human being inside. And she doesn't condemn him. She weeps for him. Now that confession, it's not the end of the story. Not by a long shot. In fact, Dostoevsky makes it pretty clear that this is where the real story is just beginning.
And it's actually a combination of both Porfiry and Sonya that gets him to take the next step. Porfiry's logic has him completely cornered, there's no escape. But it's Sonya's compassion that gives him the courage to actually walk into the police station and turn himself in. So his journey continues in a brutal prison camp in Siberia. And this is not some quick fix. At first, he's still that same proud, angry guy. But slowly, through sickness and suffering and Sonya's absolute devotion, she literally follows him all the way to Siberia. That hard shell of intellectual pride finally starts to crack. And for the first time, maybe, he starts to feel genuine humility and love.
Ultimately, his whole theory was just a catastrophic failure. His attempt to become a god, to rise above humanity, only proved how deeply, painfully human he really was. His real journey wasn't about becoming extraordinary. It was about the long, hard road to simply becoming human again.
And that is why this novel is so much more than just a detective story. It's one of the greatest psychological thrillers ever written. It's a profound look at the battle between reason and faith, pride and humility, and how the most devastating punishment isn't in a jail cell, but in the prison we create for ourselves.
Which brings us right back to where we started. After seeing everything Raskolnikov went through, what do you think? Can a great idea ever justify a terrible act? Or is the truest punishment something internal, something there's no escape from? That's the question Dostoevsky leaves us with, and it's why this story is still so incredibly powerful today.